Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark with Wear Parts, and with me today I've got Eric Derry from our customer care team. And what we want to go over today is Coulter blades. There's many different variations of Coulter blades, isn't there, Eric? And it goes all the way from 15.88 all the way up to 36 inch in diameter, just depending on which edge style. Tell us just a little bit about Coulter blades, what they're used for, their applications. Obviously it's quite extensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of different applications for Coulter blades, anywhere from lead Coulter on a fertilizer rig, plow Coulters out in front of an actual moldboard plow. Just about any application where you want to be running straight through the ground and you're not trying to turn soil is where you'd be using a Coulter.
It's cutting.
It's going to be cutting through the ground, cutting stalks, cutting that residue, sizing it, slicing it, getting that field ready for planting, getting that seedbed prepped, and breaking that soil up.
Gotcha. And also, as you get into the wavies, there is some tillage happening with that wave style too,
Right.
but it just depends. It goes all the way from like a smooth, just to go over some of them, we've got bubble Coulters, fluted Coulters, that's fluted edge, and then fluted with a smooth edge.
Yeah, this
There
one,
you go.
this one right here is fluted all the way out to the edge. You can see that these flutes go all the way clear out to the edge of the Coulter. So you have that initial cutting action all the way along this with that little bit of extended edge.
And then we also have some that are fluted with a smooth edge, but it's a customer preference on that, isn't there? But so we've got bubble Coulters, we've got fluted Coulters, notch Coulter blades, smooth Coulter blades, wavy Coulters, 8 wave or 13 wave or 25 wave Coulters, and then we have directional Coulter blades, and that varies all the way from like a 12 wave all the way up to a 20 wave on directional. And that pretty much looks like covers the different types of Coulters. So let's start right away on bubble Coulters. Tell us just a little bit about these, Eric, a bubble Coulter blade.
So a bubble Coulter, it's basically you have these indentations running through. They don't extend all the way out to the edge. So as you're going through the ground, you're going to be getting a little bit of that movement side to side, but still having that nice sharp cutting edge on the outside. These are not used quite as much anymore, but there's still some applications that where this is called for. One of the interesting things about this one, we can kind of talk about this. This actually has just a pallet holder.
Okay. Yep.
Now the reason for that is so that we can custom cut the Coulter to fit your application.
So, because sometimes you have like a 5 on 4 3/4, or you have 4 on 5 1/4, or 4 on 5, several different bolt patterns that go into Coulters. But generally, is the bubble Coulter used for planting?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main uses for it. It's kind of a specialized thing.
For planting, okay. And then fluted Coulters. We've got that all the way from, again, 15.88 inches all the way up to 20 inches on fluted Coulters, both in 4 mil, 4.5 mil, and 5 mil are the different thickness options on your fluted Coulter blades. And as we showed already, there was a fluted one. I think there might be, yeah. So here is a fluted Coulter with a smooth edge. Tell us what, Eric, would you use that for?
This would be like a lead Coulter for a fertilizer rig potentially.
Okay. Yep.
You could also, in some of your tillage applications where you're doing sizing, it's just a matter of how much movement you want to have in that soil, whether you use a plain, notched, a fluted, even into the wavies. It all just depends on how much tillage action you want to get, and how much sidewall compaction you can deal with.
Gotcha. And this particular one actually has a dual bolt pattern. It's got a 4 on 5, and it has a 4 on 5 1/4, so you can fit 2 different hubs there with a 3 11/16 pilot. Then we move on to the notch coulter blades. And it looks like here is a notched one. So why would somebody use a notch coulter?
One of the things that a notch coulter does, it gives you more cutting area, cutting radius.
Okay.
You've got more edge exposed where you can actually get in there. You can slice those stalks. It's going to be able to, especially like going into corn ground where you're trying to get that residue knocked down, trying to get it down to where the next time you come through with your cultivating and planting passes, you're not going to have those big stalks just hanging out there and just clogging everything up. So see, we got these sharpened notches here.
Yeah, I was noticing that's on a bevel, actually, isn't
Right.
it? To help with your cutting.
That's going to give you additional cutting action throughout there.
So you do lose a little bit of life compared to a standard smooth coulter when you go with a notch. You do give up a little life, but you get a lot more cutting, so you don't have hairpinning when you get wet conditions with your stalks and stuff. So that's a notch coulter. Then we move on to a smooth coulter.
And you'll see a lot of different round products throughout this series of videos. But one of the designations that makes a coulter different than like a planer blade is that this edge is actually beveled on both sides. On a planer blade, it tends to only have a bevel on one side because you're trying to match two of them up together. On a coulter, you want that to run down the center because you're trying to cut down the center. You're not trying to run at an angle or anything.
That brings up a good point, actually. So a coulter blade doesn't have any concavity,
Correct.
does it? So you've got it's got waves. So you might get some that are an inch or inch and a half, maybe 2 inch on your 8 waves. But a coulter blade is flat. There's no concavity to it like there is with a disc blade. So on our smooth coulter blades, we've got those in stock all the way from a 16 inch up to a 36 inch. The 16 inch is 4 mil thick. The 36 inch is 12 mil. That's a big coulter blade. They use that on fire plows and different things down in the southeast. But so that's 16s, 17s, 18s, all the way up to 36 on 2 inch increments is our general smooth coulter lineup. Then moving on from there, we move to an 8 wave coulter. So moving on to an 8 wave coulter, Eric, tell us a little bit about when you would use an 8 wave coulter over against other times.
Well, one of the things that you're going to see with this is just how extreme those undulations are. You're going up to almost 2 inches full width here. So as you're doing that, that's going to be moving a lot more dirt, getting a lot more tillage action. The bad thing about that is when you start going to those wider waves, you can get more sidewall compaction. So that's something that you have to take into consideration also.
And also penetration.
Yes.
The wider the wave, the harder it is to go in the ground. So that's just something to bear in mind for your own particular application. But it definitely has its uses out there.
Yes.
I know the Orthman one tripper uses an 8 wave on the back end of it, and then also the Salford, one of the vertical tillage units that they do, runs an 8 wave as well. So
Really trying to get that dirt moving, boiling, trying to get that almost down to a powder. 12.
then we move on to a 13 wave blade. So this here is a 22 inch 13 wave blade. And I think it is either 6.5 mil thick or 7 mil thick, this particular blade. So this is used, 13 wave is used in vertical tillage, it's used in manure application. It has many different uses for a 13 wave. So on the 13 wave, it doesn't do quite as much throwing of the soil, does it, as
No.
an 8 wave?
Right, it's going to have less tillage action, And at the same time, it's going to have less sidewall compaction too. So it's a good one for opening up the ground and especially for things like a manure application where you are trying to get something down in there and have a little bit of a trench for that to fall into.
And then on the sizes on our 13 wave, they go all the way from 16 inches in diameter up to 22 inch in diameter on our 13 waves. And that's 16 by 4 all the way up to a 22 by 8. We actually stock the 22 inch in several thicknesses, but that's a little bit on our 13 wave. And then we move on to our 25 wave. We stock this in just one size, 15.88 by 4.5 mil. And this is often used on a planter setup, isn't it, Eric?
Yeah, that's one of the main applications for that. And you have the 25 waves, so you have more undulations, not as aggressive, side to side, not going to be throwing as much dirt. So it works really well in those planter type applications.
That's the only 25 wave we got. And then we have many different directional Coulter blades. And do we have any directionals here?
Got one back here.
Go for it.
Okay, you can see on here, this directional Coulter blade, those undulations are actually at an angle from the center. So they're actually coming up like this. So as this blade is rotating on the shaft and going into the ground, it's actually penetrating that ground, coming straight in.
Right, so say you're running 2 inches deep, where the ground runs into that wave, it's actually, the wave is going vertical into the ground. So it actually rooster tails its soil a bit more than like an 8 wave or a 13 wave, is that right?
Right, especially on applications where, like this, where you're really moving at a high speed, doing high speed tillage. That's really going to be throwing a lot of dirt, getting a lot of coverage, just boiling that soil, really loosening it up.
Helps with the cutting too, with
Absolutely.
that going like that. And sizes on our directional Coulter blades, they go from 16 inch in diameter all the way up to 22 inch in diameter on our directional Coulter blades. We do have a couple of our directional Coulter blades that have a little bit of concavity that go on a case true tandem machine. So
Here's one actually right here.
okay,
So you can see right here that this isn't quite flat. It's not a true Coulter, but we still include it in our Coulter lineup.
but it's got what, maybe 1.5 inches of concavity or so.
Right, very shallow
Very
concavity.
shallow. High speed application, isn't it?
Correct. Again, you have the offset undulations here that are running at an angle. So as it's going into the ground, they're coming in vertical and really throwing that soil back out.
So actually, that being said, with it having concavity, there must be a left and a right to these blades?
Correct. Yes, because of the directional on here, you have to have this particular one is a left hand, so you'd have to have the one that's the right hand, where the crimp center would actually be on the opposite side.
Right, so when you run a directional Coulter, when you run a directional wave and you have concavity, it forces you into a left and right situation. Whereas if it's non-directional, if it's a wavy or a fluted or whatever, then they can be ran either way.
Correct, because this does not run true down the center.
Well, that wraps up our Coulter blade family. Any questions or requests, please feel free to call us anytime, 888-4BLADES. Ask for anybody in our customer care team and we'll get you taken care of. Thank you.